Hello and a good evening to everyone. You are joined for Flower Hour, episode 5. I'm going to be joined by a fellow model, creative, and an activist. We're going to be talking about things such as colonialism, imperialism, beauty standards, and so much more. So this is just a conversation I'm very much looking forward to having. So let me just make sure that I'm going to send this through. Still discovering how to use this Instagram live. But yeah, I'm so happy that you're here joined. I think it's just going to be one of those worthwhile conversations that need to be had, you know? So yeah, I hope everyone's just looking forward to it, and hopefully she's locked in and she sees it. Let me send a message. And if you've got questions, just come through and ask them, because I think it's really, really important for people to ask questions. Most importantly, it helps share the discourse and so much more, you know? That's the most important thing. It's one of the biggest reasons why I do these lives. So I'm just going to let everyone just trickle in and just stay active. I hope everyone's safe with the whole corona going around. The country's getting back to normal. Let me just double check. Yes. Hopefully she sees it. Hopefully my connection doesn't play up as well, actually. Most importantly. Because my connection played up in the last one that I did. And then most importantly, I'm going to be having, in the future, I've got even more exciting guests that's coming up as well. So that's going to be really good as well. Let me just send this to her again. I think in the meantime, actually, probably, while I'm waiting, I can probably read her bio that she sent to me, which I think is actually amazing. Let me get that up. Let's see, where is it? So, from Sheerah Rajendran, activist, model, creative. Man said lockdown trim again. No, Jeffrey, my hair just grew, that's all. So let me read the bio that she sent me. Consider myself a creative with a moral obligation, using social media, creativity and modeling as platforms to inclusively celebrate BI, people of color, people, especially BI, I'm not too sure, POC women, as well as myself, of course. I use my platform to empower women to love themselves and their bodies to the fullest capacity. Encourage questioning harmful European beauty ideals that dictate ideals of beauty and femininity in society, as well as a touch on the importance of self-love, visibility, representation. Sorry, let me just... Yeah. I'm not an academic. I talk through my own experiences, educating and informing myself on issues and informing others on my platform in a way that is accessible, inclusive, and down to earth. I was literally just reading your bio.
Yeah, that was really bad. I was just like, oh my God, that's so bad.
No, it's not bad at all. But I was kind of just letting everyone get a gist of who you are. So I'll let you introduce yourself, most importantly, to everyone that's going to be watching.
Yep. So my name is Sheerah Rajendran. I'm a model. I'm an activist and a creative. So a lot of my work is centered around Black and brown women and people, like, you know, just kind of also just generally just focusing a lot of issues around the Black and brown community and empowerment, self-love, body positivity. I call it radical self-love as well. So yeah. I'm just really bad at doing bios for myself sometimes, so, you know.
I think it's I say this with every live, but it's just good to be able to have people that come on that have different experiences and come from different walks of life. So could you tell us the community that you're from, and I suppose some of the experiences that we're going to be talking about as well?
Yeah, so I'm Tamil. So I'm a Tamil from Sri Lanka. I choose not to call myself Sri Lankan just purely because of that. Well, if anyone's aware of like the whole what happened in Sri Lanka in regards to what happened to the Tamil community, there was a whole genocide against the Tamil community, and obviously the majority Sinhalese extremist government committed so many atrocities against Tamil people. So I was actually born in Sri Lanka, and me and my family came over to the UK for, you know, a better life. And yeah, my experiences growing up has been quite interesting. It's like that in between of like not being white enough for the white kids, and then not being, you know, brown enough for the brown kids. And naturally, as a like being darker skinned and South Asian, like even, you know, there's like racism that exists between the South Asian communities and hierarchies. And, you know, I grew up with not just having racism white folks, but also a lot of South Asian people for being Tamil. And like, it's not, and especially in a school that I was, like, a lot of the Tamils that were there, we were like a very small group of Tamil kids. Like, I think there was only 4 of us in our year, and then all the other Asian kids, so the other kids were all North Indian. And it's typically known that, like, you know, the racism that exists between North Indians, and they're quite racist towards like South Indians and Tamils, and usually Asian groups that are darker skinned. So yeah, like, that's just a bit about, like, you know, some of the experiences that I've had growing up. But yeah, for me, I think what you naturally do is also go to relate to a group that is more looks a lot more like you. And for me, that was actually, I related a lot more to the Black kids around me and Black culture, and especially Black women. They inspired me throughout my life, and just even I can say that they actually incited my self-love growing up, because it was, as much as I love my community, it was the South Asian and Tamil community and people in my own family. They incited the self-hate that I had for myself, and, you know, my darker complexion. And the first time I even had anyone even say anything nice about the way that I looked was a Black girl in school, and I still won't forget it. I was like in my PE class, and I think I was really like conscious of my body, and it was just a little comment, but I never ever forget it. And she said, "Oh, you've got a really cute butt, Sheerah." And I was just like, I got so gassed. I was like, that was just like the nicest thing I ever had said to me, because especially in school, I didn't have anyone say anything nice on the way that I look. So yeah, that was like a mixture of everything, but I hope I didn't sound jumbled up. Sometimes I get a little bit carried away when I'm talking.
No, definitely not. So I grew up in Southwest London, and I went to school with probably about 80% Black kids, about maybe 15% Asian, and maybe the next 5% white. And there was a small little Tamil community. But I know you said you don't want to identify as Tamil. What would you rather?
Oh, no. I don't. I identify as Tamil, but I don't like being called Sri Lankan. Like that. Yeah, because the term, to identify as Sri Lankan is identifying with a state that committed atrocities against Tamil people. And even like the flag, I don't relate to that flag. So there is a type of, like, when I do see other, like, even Tamil people have that flag up in their bio, there's that little part of me that feels uncomfortable because of why it signifies. So like, even when people introduce me, they're like, oh yeah, because I feel like it's a way of erasing my Tamilness. It's like, you know, when, for example, like when people call something urban, it's like, just call it Black, because even that is, for me, by saying urban, you're eradicating the Blackness, the Black influence of something. Yeah. And it's the same when someone just calls me Sri Lankan, it's erasing my Tamil identity.
Well, it's a very blanket term, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
I was reading, and it said that the Tamil community is one of the largest and oldest ethno-linguistic groups from part of India and Sri Lanka, and you're typically excluded from the South Asian narrative. Is there any way that you could go deeper into that for people that are watching? Because again, I'm learning just as much as other people. My audience will probably be learning too.
Yeah, so I mean, it's still something I'm also learning about my own ancestry. So like, yeah, so our ancestors, people that are Tamil speaking, South Indian people, their ancestors were Dravidians. Dravidian people, they're the indigenous people of India. A lot of people don't know, like, you know, this is something that I like started learning about when I was 16 by myself. And yeah, so the Dravidians were, you know, if you're Tamil, your ancestors are Dravidians. So they were the indigenous people of India. Yeah. And what kind of happened was, well, you know, the North Indians, their ancestors are Indo-Aryans. So I don't know if you've heard of the Indo-Aryan invasion.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Indo-Aryans, they were basically white people, and they came and invaded India and forced the Dravidian people further down south. That's why they always say, like, the further down south you go in India, the darker the people get. And so, like, yeah, so that the South Indians, their ancestors are Dravidians, and so the Indo-Aryans kind of resided in the northern parts of India. And it's, I guess people don't even talk about this Indo-Aryan supremacy. They created the caste system.
Yes.
So yes, so even it's like, even predating colonial times, colorism and like, you know, colorism came from that caste system that they created, putting all the higher castes to be associated to lighter skin, and, you know, darker skin, and then darker skin being associated to lower castes. And obviously when the British came over, they exploited this caste system to further benefit white supremacy. So yeah, so that division has always existed. And also, even for me, I just feel, even though I don't know if you've heard that term, desi. You know, you've heard that term, desi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that now in the last few years has been all of a sudden used as an umbrella term to include all South Asians. But growing up, for me, that I never ever seen any of my culture be included, or my group of people be included under that term. I always saw North Indian culture, specifically Punjabi culture, being represented, like, through media. The, like, representation, all of that was always like, yeah, North Indian culture that was represented. I never seen, so that term was so foreign to my people. So now that all of a sudden, like, South Asian groups and whatever are using that term to describe us, I just don't think that's fair. It's not a term that's for everybody. I think it only represents one specific culture and group. So yeah.
So in the way that, you know, you've come to the conclusion that the term Sri Lankan erases your experience, is there anything that's happening right now that's allowing for the experience you've had to be more centered, and for people to understand what you've gone through and the history that you've encountered?
I think people that are able to speak about, like, as a Tamil person, I know that, you know, the privilege of having, you know, this platform, and also, you know, the privilege of also being better off than compared to, you know, Tamils that are in Sri Lanka. Like, they're not able to just speak so openly about things the way that I can, because, you know, they can put themselves in danger in that sense. But I think that's why when I say that I'm a creative with a moral obligation, it's my moral obligation because I have a platform. And as someone from a marginalized community, I can't just be like a white person and just go and be an influencer. That influencing and the platform needs to be used to go and, you know, put important messages across, which wouldn't normally be put across, and using my platform to center those messages and stuff. So, you know.
Yeah. Okay. And from what I've seen off your page, you know, you very much challenge the stereotypical Eurocentric norms of beauty standards. And I really wanted to get a little bit more into that. You know, you said that a Black woman essentially made you feel positive in who you were, and you can somewhat relate to the Black experience. So if you could go into that.
And I say that, yes, I can relate to it, but also I very much have an intersectional view of, you know, experiences. Like, I know that I can never ever compare my experiences to a Black woman, especially, like, because although being a dark skin and, you know, hairy girl, I also have features and a hair type that is considered palatable, as composed to, let's say, like, my experience could never be compared to a Black woman of my complexion or even darker, with Afrocentric features and a hair and Afrocentric hair types. I know that gives them a disadvantage in the way that it's being viewed. So even that's another thing that I like to stress on. It's like, we need to have a intersectional view of everything, understanding that each part of our identities can give us, you know, certain privileges and certain disadvantages. And, you know, even in this conversation about self-love, it's not just about loving yourself. That I like, the self-love that I like to teach is also about expanding your views on beauty, and also addressing your own privileges. And especially, I know that I have a lot of South Asian women that follow me, and, you know, they will, you know, they message me a lot, but I really hope that when they are also, you know, learning to love themselves, that they're also checking their privileges and expanding their, you know, what's the word now? Sometimes I go, but, expanding their view of beauty. And that's why I also like to share my platform and share as many different body types as I can, especially like Black women. For me, even just being thankful that, and crediting Black women, especially plus size Black women, for creating that movement, because essentially the self-love movement was created by plus size Black women. It was created for marginalized bodies, but they created it, and yet throughout this whole movement, they have been the ones that have been sidelined from it. So it's kind of using, you know, yes, I can do my self-love thing and talk about me being dark-skinned, but also addressing my privileges and using it to kind of bring back the attention to Black women who created that thing.
Okay. No, I can definitely understand that. And I think just from the comments alone right now, you're empowering a lot of people. And I really wanted, obviously there's a very obvious question. Your page, you know, you're as you described yourself, you're a hairy girl. And typically hair on a woman is typically not seen as beautiful. It's not seen as acceptable. When did you come to that decision to keep your armpit hair and to allow yourself to be how you naturally actually are, and not to have to live up to these beauty standards?
One thing I say is just like, even one thing I've always done is question everything around me. Why, okay, you know, like, why do you find something unattractive? Because you essentially, when you go down to everything, it's because you've been conditioned to think that way. And it's the same. It's like, you know, a guy can literally have his arms up and, you know, his hairy arms showing. No one bats an eyelid. And I was like, then why is it a problem when I do it? But it's also understanding that this idea of femininity has been very much influenced by white supremacy as well. It has always centered white women. And, you know, the way that white women have always been put as this delicate, you know, a majority of white women don't have much body hair either. So, you know, all of these ideas around femininity have been centered around white women. And it's questioning that and being like, you know what, fuck that. I don't need that. Everyone's just been conditioned to feel a type of way. My body hair isn't hurting anyone. It's not causing any harm for anyone. And also, even if I chose to take it all off, people will always have something to say. You can keep it, someone will say something. I can take it off, someone will have something to say. But my point is that even about the body hair thing, it's bigger than the body hair thing. My point is that women should be able to make whatever choice that they want with their body, whether they want to keep it or shave it or be in between. And they shouldn't have to be questioned for it. Like, I don't like the police thing. That's my problem. It's like, people having the audacity to ask me why. It's like, why are my pubes your concern? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, why is it your concern? It shouldn't bother you so much. But I guess people don't even realize how violent the conditioning is, that people become so militant about making sure not only they conform to something, but other people conform to something as well. So and
I you know, I can't speak for everyone. I personally think a woman should be able to do whatever she wants with her body. Her bodily autonomy, I think, is the most important thing. But the minute that I posted that I was going to go live with you, people checked your page. And the first question that they came and asked me was, how is this girl so brave to have her body hair out there? And that's why I had to ask you. I had to ask that question. I want to know, was there a moment where the hairs on the end of your body said, look, listen, we don't want to be cut no more?
It's literally, you know, when you just think, it's like, why I think it's like, when you come out of, it's like, you have to remember, like, we're constantly unlearning everything. Like, no one's fully conscious. You're constantly unlearning. And the moment that you come out and be like, wait a minute, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why does this actually matter? Like, we've actually, it's just one of those things. I just think for me, it first started with, like, I just stopped I'm really hairy. And like, I was, you know, before, I think maybe when I was like 12, I started, or 10. When, you know what it is? I'll tell you, actually. I was playing basketball with some of the girls. I was really sporty, wearing a tank top, playing basketball. And I'm like, you know, I'm in primary school, I'm playing basketball, and then I scored a goal, and then this girl was like, "Oh, shoot, your armpits are hairy." And it was only in that moment that I started to feel conscious. So before that, didn't have a problem, and that's why I say you only have a problem with the way you look, and when somebody tells you that there's something wrong with you. But before that, you never ever, you know, that's what they say. You are taught to hate yourself, and I guess in a sense, it's like going back to that young kid where I wasn't even bothered about what was happening with my body. And, you know, from that moment when I started shaving, blah, 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 I was doing all the time. And it was all this stress of like, oh, you know, and it's like, it's not like I have like thin hair either. Like these people, like I would be in the changing rooms, like not to sound like weird, but like in changing rooms and just like like looking at the girl's hair on their body. And I would just be like, oh, it's not fair. Like they can still have their body hair and it's so light that you can't even see it. But mine, like I have hair all over and it's so visible. And again, it's that conditioning. And then slowly, maybe it was more in like when I turned 19, 20, that I just first, I was just like, I don't care about my arm hair. So I just let it go. No one really even said anything. If anyone did say anything, it was someone from my community. It was the auntie. It was, you know, because they're so concerned, and especially in the South Asian community, the two things that a woman is meant to be is light skin and hairless.
Yes.
And I am not any of that. I'm not any of that, and I don't care about being any of that. And and then slowly I just started just like, you know, just not really caring about like the body hair stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, it's like, you know, you still like sometimes when I'm feeling conscious, it's not even about how I feel about, because I really like the way that I look with my body hair. What other people make me feel uncomfortable. It's like, why should I have to go somewhere and have to have people stare at me or something because I've made a decision with my body that they've decided that they don't like? But yeah, people literally be whispering or saying stuff like that. And I've experienced sometimes in, you know, certain cases, but I always think that it's also, it happens just because people are actually scared of people doing what they want with their bodies, because there's a lot more people than you realize that are so used to being one way and following a system that when they see someone just step out and do something, which is not a big deal, it's literally body hair, literally grows out of our fucking body, and people want to, you know, go crazy about it. But again, that's conditioned. You're conditioned to even attack people that step out of the norms.
Well, it's interesting because body hair and hair in general, it's a barrier to protect you from bacteria. And it's interesting how it's better to actually really and truly have hair than it is to not have hair in general. And I wanted to ask you, for a lot of people that fear that judgment, and I think society is really harsh on women in general in terms of what they should do, the policing of what they can and can't do. How did you just break that conditioning? Because there's going to be people here that are going to be watching and be like, how did you do it?
Are you talking about body hair, or are you just talking about self-love in general? Like, how did
body hair in particular, and then if you want to answer about self-love, then
again, it's just breaking out of it. It's part of me. That's just one of those things I have to, I think part of it was also just like, why should I have to spend so much on this hair removal stuff? Number one. I mean, it's not like I did spend much on hair removal stuff anyway, because I mean, I'm cheap as fuck, so I really don't like spending. That was just more practical. But I think it was just, I had it in my head because I was like pre-planning, like in my head, I was thinking like questions you might ask me, and I'm like talking to myself in my room how I would answer this. But you know, when it comes to self-love and accepting your body, especially as a Black and brown person and a woman especially, you know, in a world where it's constantly telling us that we're not good at this, we're not good at that, we're not attractive for this and whatever, you know, me hating that part of me is only contributing to my destruction. In a world where it's already vouching for my destruction, me hating myself only contributes to that. So why on earth should I hate something that I was taught to hate? Because that is directly helping white supremacy, and I can't, over my fucking dead body, that I ever contribute to the destruction of my own and myself. So that's how I viewed it. I know it's like you know, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. So you
Yeah.
essentially had an epiphany where you realize that society profits off your insecurities. So
Yeah.
why do you have to carry on?
Why am I contributing to this? I'm not contributing to white supremacy. I'm not that even is with, you know, skin lightening products to you know, hair removal products. This is literally being created from our self-hate.
Absolutely.
And when I see, you know, it's when I see, you know,
No, don't tell me it's cut out. Oh, is it cut out? Can you see me? Can you hear me? I think my internet might have cut out. No. Can you hear me?
it
Yeah.
just put.
Oh, cool. Thank God. I thought it was my internet. What were you saying?
No, I was just saying it's just like it pains me when I do see, like, you know, black and brown people, especially with the bleaching, you know, industry. It's like $1 billion industry that has been literally, these are
Yes.
racist white companies that have profited off of our people. And
Yes.
that is also us contributing to our own destruction, stripping away our melanin, stripping, that's a violent act. In a way, that's erasure, that is genocidal, if that makes sense. It is.
Well,
And
yeah,
you know,
it's very much the idea that we have to look one set way, and that uniformity is crazy. And I think in 2013 in Nigeria, I think it was 77% of women were bleaching. I think that's crazy. The closer
sorry,
you
connection down again. Sorry.
look, can you hear me?
Yeah. No, it just keeps on going in and out, but I think it's
Oh,
fine.
you can hear me.
I think so.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Thank God. Yeah, and it's just very much that idea of blonde hair and blue eyes and who is beautiful. But we both would probably agree that the idea of beauty it's subjective. It's incredibly a personal experience. So do you think the media, as such a big institution, continues to play these effects?
Yeah, definitely. It's propaganda. It is propaganda. It's got so normal that sometimes I think even those people creating the content don't even realize they're subconsciously doing it. And actually saying that, which I was thinking, I talked about this the other day, but I know with you, there's like this TV show called Greenleaf. It's a Oprah Winfrey show on Netflix.
Okay.
And all the characters, the whole cast is black, and there's some like problematic tropes in it where it's like, you know, you've got the leading woman who's a very fair-skinned woman and she's kind of like praised and stuff, and then all of the darker skinned women are not only jealous of this lighter skinned woman, but they're also given some of the worst storylines, like the worst, and like you're kind of, the way that they play it out, you're kind of created to dislike them.
Yeah.
And that is bad. Like, I mean, that is kind of like a propaganda kind of thing. Like, I'm not saying that is they're purposely doing, but I think it's become so normal to have the darker skinned women playing, you know, jealous, angry, you know, you know, just really just negative roles, and then the lighter skinned women always playing like, you know, the innocent, nice, fragile ones. And yeah, I did, and I think that will have that does have a subconscious effect on you, because look how it's the same thing. Like even in India, they've got like these TV shows all the time. It's always the dark skinned girls that are like the evil characters, and then the light skinned girls are always like these innocent, nice, you know, girl next door types. And it very much does play a, you know, role. It's a fact that it does affect you. And it's like that, what's that famous test with the doll test?
I was literally, going to ask about that. With the doll test, I believe it was in 1940 by Dr. Kenneth Clark. They spoke about the psychological effects of segregation on African-American kids and the feelings of inferiority, and how I think our generation is doing amazing things in terms, sorry, let me just, this thing is really annoying me. Right, that should be better now. Is that better? That should be better? I think so, yeah, that's better. Yeah, and very much this idea that whiteness it's synonymous with power, beauty, synonymous with blessings and everything that's great. And when you look at things that are darker, it's synonymous with darkness, matter out of place and dirt. And do you think, whilst our generation is challenging these tropes and media is trying to change this and we've got independent outlets, my question to you is, do you think there is enough that we will be able to do in our time to change these stereotypes and narratives with the dark skinned and the light skinned?
Here's the thing. It's not just with colorism that's the issue. We're also talking about, I think I mentioned it when we were like discussing, doing all of this, but it's not just colorism. We have to understand that blackness on a whole, it's not just the color of one's the color of dark skin that's a problem. It's also the black features and black hair types.
Yes.
That play all into it.
Featureism, right?
Yeah, featureism and hairism. All of these things affect black women the most. Or black people with Afrocentric features. Yes, being dark skinned is one thing. It's like, that's another thing. That's why I say intersectionality is what is going to help us move forward. We can't just all look at our, like I said, I can't compare my experience with dark skin to the same way that a black woman with Afrocentric features has, because at the same time, I know that my features have been seen as, more palatable.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Like, even when people are addressing colorism, they completely forget how much it affects those people with non-Eurocentric features, more Afrocentric features. So, I haven't seen enough people kind of talk about featureism and hairism in this conversation. So even that, it's like how I'm a realist when it comes to like, do I think that the world even will change when it comes to racism in a whole? Colorism goes into that, anti-blackness, all of these things combined. There's so much little things that we have to go into, right? And one of the things that I don't believe that, I don't know, I don't want to even sound pessimistic when I say this. It's so hard because I think being someone that's kind of just constantly looking at the world and just being so disappointed by it and so angry by it, and, seeing that there has been, we can only, this is going to sound, I don't know if it's going to sound really sad if I say this, because I used this analogy with somebody else and it was just like, they were like, this is really sad too. But it's like, we have to, white supremacy is a cancer, right? And it's a cancer that has affected black and brown communities and just ravaged our communities, right? And we have to look at our communities like, cancer patients in their last dying days, you make their last few days as comfortable as you can. And that's what I'm trying to do. Is like, the racism is so ingrained in our society, so insidious that to even think this thing has taken centuries and centuries to implement itself into every aspect of our lives. To think that there are people that think, in the next 10 years, in the next 100 years, this thing has taken more than 100 years to destroy our communities. The only thing that I can do is to uplift and empower black and brown communities and make the world just bearable to live in. Because this idea of thinking that we can change it in a way where, there's no more racism. I'm sorry, but when you chuck a pebble into the ocean, the ripples are still there. The ripples will stay there forever. And it's not me saying, things we can't change things. We can change some laws. We can empower the people in our community that actually want to feel better about themselves and, move, that want to essentially create even the littlest things that can maybe make our lives just a little bit better. But do I think that these things will change completely? No, I don't. But I know that if there are people that want to be empowered and whatever, come and join me. But there are plenty of, black and brown people that are still in that conditioning that don't even want to come out of that because the conditioning is so violent.
I just want to say to everyone, because people are saying that they want it to be saved. It's going to be saved. It's going to be on my page. So it's going to be here for everyone to access no matter what. So I just want to confirm that. And I've seen people that have questions. If you can, just throw questions in the question box, because it makes it easier for us to go straight there and then you can answer the questions. So I want to ask you. So I think, again, the brain is a creature of volume and repetition. Very much the idea that conditioning, it happens over and over again. when you look at children, children are malleable. You can change children. Children are a mini universe. So you can teach a child to do anything that they want. If a child grows up with a racist ideology, more than likely their racist ideology will perpetuate into the bigger world. And what I want to ask you is, when we look at children, we see the best in humanity. I want to ask, I'm not sure if you've seen on Channel 4, there was a little social experiment where they were tackling racism in schools, and they were looking at unconscious bias with children. And I wanted to ask you, do you think children are the way forward for us having a better future, perhaps, even if we are pessimistic or optimistic? Can we teach children and get rid of that negative conditioning and have more positive conditioning to influence the wider society?
Yeah, I mean, they are the future, but that's also now, like, it's also to do with their environment and what you're exposing that child to. And that is assuming that there are so many people that are, like, you have to still remember, people that are socially conscious are still the minority, because the majority is still not, conscious. A lot of people are still racist and homophobic and misogynistic, and those people will most definitely not care about the type of content that is being shown to their child. We will, but, it's hoping that maybe that will have some kind of domino effect, right? But it depends. People need to be realistic about the change that they're looking at. I think, I don't know. It's just one of the things. I think it really just depends on that kid's being exposed to, and educating the kid. And that also, that's the thing. In those years between the ages of, like, when we start, like, going to school at, like, 5, right?
I believe so. Nursery, right?
Yeah. So, like, in those years that we're the most impressionable, this is also a thing of, like, it goes down to the education system. We need to decolonize our education systems and start having, even, like, the authors and the books that we're reading, more authors of color. Just, like, those changes make such a difference. Having like, being exposed to more Black and brown people in our histories, because they exist, they very much exist, and we need to. And I think it's not just that, it's just, like, even I think about, like, in history class, when everything that I've learned in my life about the reality of what this country is and everything that has happened has come through my own education. It hasn't been through school. And if anything, I'm being in history classes where they're praising white supremacists. I can hear that.
No, I can hear you.
I don't know. No, but that's what it is. It's just, and I think as a kid, you still think that, the adults know better. You don't question it sometimes. You just take it as it is. And it's until, I don't know.
And that makes me think, because I'm not sure if you know, but to anyone who doesn't know, I'm from Trinidad. In Trinidad, we have a large Indian population. And my granddad was what you would call Dogra, which means he's Black and Indian mixed. And my granddad, interestingly, didn't really like me because I was lighter skinned, but he favored my cousins who are more Indian looking. And it's just very interesting that you say that, because it was an ideology that kind of went through the rest of my family. But I think my family are okay now. It doesn't really matter. But when I was older, my auntie said to me once, she was like, "Oh, you've got a lovely nose." And when my hair grows, for example, people are surprised by the texture. They're like, "Oh, it must be the Indian you per se." And as you said, we were talking about features, and very much the idea that Eurocentric features are favored above everything else. There's children that grow up, and as they grow up into society, there's ways that they want to look. And someone asked an interesting question here. Can we have a racist-free society in capitalism? It's a system dependent on oppression. So it's a question I've got to ask. Well, let you answer. No,
I mean, we can't. It's just because it is dependent on someone always being below that, like, I had it's weird, like, that is a conversation that I had even last week. I was like, it doesn't work because, yes, some people are just talking about trying to get rid of systematic racism, but it's like that. It's like in order for change to happen, you need to be able to be willing to destroy everything else around you.
Absolutely.
And are people comfortable with that?
Of
Because
course
I think
not.
when it gets brought up, then you'll see a lot more people. I feel like when that is then, when your comforts and everything that you know around you is being taken away, how many people are left in the revolution, right?
Yeah.
How many people will say and be like, oh, actually, you know, I'm kind of used to this lifestyle and da da da. Well, guess what? You're gonna have to get used if you want real change to happen. Like no change comes through comfort, right? So no. So my answer is no, you can't have a, racist free society with capitalism.
So what would be a viable alternative that encompasses the difference of humans, but also helps us to stay equal in the very same breath? Could you see a system? Is it tangible for us to have something like that? Or am I just being a dreamer and too radical?
I mean, I just think that's I don't know. I sound so pessimistic. I'm just trying to see the world for what it is because it's insidious as fuck, right? It's just white supremacy is so ingrained. Like I said, it's like what we can do, I think, as, conscious black and brown people is create as much space and opportunities. It's like, we can't, what they say? It's like, if there's no point asking for a seat at the table when that table was never really for us.
Absolutely.
So you create your own table. You create your own table.
All the time.
There's no, it's like, there's a why, what, exactly. Why on earth would I want a seat at that table when that table was never created for me? So might as well create my own table and use it to put my own people on. And that's all I can do. It's like, it's kind of like how we can, I think the question is more like how we can navigate through a racist world, creating our own opportunities, creating our own, institutions, and also just, kind of gone blank there. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
When you're just talking, so there's so much information in my head. Yeah, just creating your own opportunities, putting your own people on, and just trying to make sure as many black and brown people are in the positions of power as well. The ones making the decision makers. Because right now, too many decision makers that are in power are all white. There's not enough of them. The more we can get our own people on there, then we can get more of our own. It's like kind of like infiltrate, right?
Well, then that leads me on to ask you a very valid other question. You can put brown and black people in positions of power, but as a people, as ethnic minorities, we're not a monolith. We don't all have the same thinking. Whilst I might agree with you, we've come to our own conclusions. You've got individuals such as Priti Patel who claim that Labour or left-wing politicians or left-wing people are being racist to her, yet her family were kicked out of Uganda by Idi Amin because she was Asian. So is the answer just to have brown and black people? Because
no. So when I say brown and black, I should have put conscious brown and black and people. Conscious meaning like those kind of in tune with their own selves and their history. Not people like she's not the kind of person that I was talking about because, they're, like I said, but the thing is, it's people like her that white supremacy needs, because it needs to uphold white supremacy, because white supremacy is not just upheld by white folks, it's conditioned black and brown people that uphold it as well. They won't, if they think it's easier to side with whiteness in order to be comfortable. And I guess what I'm talking about is more like people, black and brown people that want genuine change for their communities and yeah, I don't know. Sorry,
So then what would genuine change look like to you and how would you go about that?
I think genuine change for what? Like in everything or what?
Very much in the idea for us to have a radical self-love and to, even if we can't fully get rid of racism, but to have it somewhat decreased in your perspective.
I think in general, just the representation to not just like for me, like I always also talk about like diversifying the types of black and brown bodies and not just showing, like I'm just talking now on like campaigns and like, with fashion. Don't just show black and brown bodies that are palatable or in proximity to whiteness. Show the diverse black and brown bodies that are further marginalized like I said, plus size Black women, brown women, you know, Afrocentric, non-Eurocentric features and hair types, showing all of that, it does make a big difference to people, because the message that you put across when you only put Black and brown people that are in proximity to whiteness in campaigns is that you're only attractive if you look like a white person somehow. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So by putting, just putting as many of our own people and all types of our people up there, that's the most important thing. But also making sure that the ones that are like, even when I've done modeling, like photo shoots and stuff like that, yeah, the team might look diverse with loads of Black and brown people running around, yet the ones making the decisions, the director or whatever, still white. Still the casting director, still white. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
would you say companies at the moment are, I think I saw a term called woke washing, where they're just trying to make it look like they're in touch with societal issues. So, you know, you have companies putting a few brown and Black people in to make it look like they care about diversity. But as you said, they're still in closer proximity to whiteness and they're still extremely palatable. So we agree that diversity and representation is important for people growing up and for people just to see themselves and to see people that look like them. So I want to ask you, how have you used modeling as a medium to promote representation, and how do you challenge those norms that you're very much against?
So for me, it's just modeling's just been a platform just because of how the fact is people are attracted to people that they find attractive. So I know that when people have come across my profile or seen my picture be posted somewhere else, they'll click on it because they like the way that I looked. And from that, it's kind of like you use it as a luring of, you know, lure people in, seeing a pretty girl, and then all of a sudden I'm like rickrolled with wokeness or something. So that's why I call it. I'm like, oh, I just rickroll you with some like information, and you're just like, whoa, what the fuck? But yeah, like it's also the fact that a lot of my modeling opportunities, I've also been picked for some of the what I've been about and what I've said. So that further allows me to use, you know, their platforms to talk about, you know, what I'm doing, or, you know, sometimes you don't even have to say anything. Just being a, you know, me being a Tamil dark-skinned woman on a campaign, that is a statement. Like that means a lot to a lot of, I know, like for me, if I a younger Sheerah seeing a Tamil girl up there in you know, in a huge campaign, would be like, oh my God, like that's me, that I see me. And what makes me, I think that statement that it makes is that, and you can do anything as well. Because if you don't see yourself, then you feel like you can't do anything. You don't feel like, oh, well, I'm invisible, I'm not important. So, you know, does that answer?
No, it does.
Yeah.
It does answer. And I wanted to throw a question to you because someone put a question in the question box, so I'm going to put it up.
How do you deal with people within your brown community that try to invalidate your...
I suppose I would say your browns, that you invalidate your brown. Like I have dark skin.
I have dark skin and very curly hair, and people in my community treat me a little differently. I think we kind of had this conversation about... You mean, wait, let me just read that again. New brown community that try to invalidate you. Are they trying to say, like, in regards to, like, they've been treated differently because
they're brown and they're invalidated because they have dark skin and curly hair? I think we could assume that's what they were asking.
Oh, I think what they're trying to say is that, okay, if somebody invalidates your identity as when I say brown, I mean South Asian. So I think this person's like trying to say that their South Asian identity has been invalidated because they don't conform to looking like...
Oh, they said they meant to say brownness.
Brownness. Yeah, so I'm guessing like invalidates your identity as a South Asian person, like brownness. How do you do? I mean, I haven't personally experienced that. Like I guess for a lot of South Asian people or like people in my community, they say I look like a typical Tamil girl. But for example, like my sister who has more Afrocentric features, like she's got curlier hair and a wider set nose and big lips. I think that you know, I can't speak for her, but she's had experience of like people trying to, even in our own community, invalidate her experience as a brown person, or even trying to deny that she's even Tamil, which, you know, because that's another thing. It's just like understanding. I think that comes in yourself, and you need to understand like someone else having their opinion, their closed-minded opinion of what your people are meant to look like. That's their ignorant mindset, but that doesn't invalidate who you are and your identity. Is that the best way to answer it? Because
I'd like to believe them they could get an answer from that. I think you explained it quite well.
You think? I don't know. I feel like I wasn't sure. Doesn't matter.
And with everything happening in the world at the moment, how do you feel about everything that's been happening in the world? So you've got the COVID's affected brown and black bodies the most. You've got the George Floyd death, the Black Lives Matter. You've got so much happening, the removal of the statues. How do you feel about the world currently? Are you in a more positive way? Like, even I know you said a while that you were pessimistic, but is there any sense of optimism that comes about?
No, I think what's coming out of it is that people are one thing I have noticed that more people I've heard have said that they're like denouncing and disassociating with their racist friends and being really, you know, cutthroat about it. That's what I've always been about. Like, even, you know, when I started, you know, self-love is also a part, like, it's also looking at the people around you. And as a black and brown person, you need to understand that if the people around you don't even understand your own experiences and can say problematic stuff like that, and, you know, that's going to have a mental effect on your psyche, and you can't be around that. So I'm optimistic in the sense that more people are willing to cut off racist and problematic friends, right? But I think, yeah, like little things like that. Don't get me wrong, there's little things that when I see, I'm like, oh, it's beautiful seeing, like, even after everything was happening, it was so beautiful to just see like the constant determination of like the black community, and just seeing like, you know, these beautiful images being put up, and like just also them just showing their black joy despite everything that's going on, and despite you know, that to me, seeing black people just be them like happy, you know, just be happy in their blackness, in who they are, that is a beautiful thing. And just seeing that on the TL, like just scrolling through and just seeing all these beautiful black bodies being happy like that, those things, that's what I mean, like those little things, those, you know, part of those small communities that we do can uplift our little communities and makes the world just that little bit bearable. And I hope, you know, that does help so many of the young black and brown kids. Just even being able to see an image like that can uplift you. But as in a whole, I think also, you know, the reason why even the protests and stuff like got to, and, you know, all of this got to the level that it did, is because when you're all in what the fact is, in our daily lives, we have so many different things that distracts, you know, even as black and brown people who are conscious, you know, we have these other things that happen in our lives that distract us from our oppression, the everyday racism and the microaggressions that come with it. And, you know, doing all these other things, you know, we know this stuff is happening, but sometimes we distract ourselves away from it. But the moment that everyone had to be locked in one space, we're all online, because that is really our only way of having communication with the outside world. You had no option but to be confronted with the reality of what this world and the system is. And that's why I think it got to the level that it did. Because it's not to say that all the other times that the Black Lives Matter movement happened that it wasn't important. It's just that this moment in time, every single person in the whole world had to be confronted with the reality of what the world is without the distractions.
Yeah. So the world, so perhaps maybe to you now, the world is challenging all the issues that it's once had. So doesn't that leave us in a more positive view that I think we're going to finally perhaps change things? I think social media has been such a revolutionizing agent for people to disseminate and share that information. So what will you continue to do for your community and in solidarity with the other communities? Because I wanted to ask you as well that is there lots of anti-blackness within the Tamil community yourself?
Oh, yeah. The South Asian community in general is so anti-black. It's a it's a serious problem in our community, and it's something that I've addressed for a long time. And I think it's not just it's anti-blackness and the appropriation of Black culture by South Asian youth in general. And it's an issue that should have been, it's a conversation that should have been had even before this, like, you know, even before the movement. Do you want to ask me something? Because I feel like I'm losing what I'm forgetting what I'm saying every time.
All right, I'm going to use a very specific example. Whenever we think of Gandhi as a revolutionary. But for years, I've known that Gandhi, some of his behaviors were technically predatory and pedophilic because he slept in the same
also,
bed.
he was anti-Black.
I know, yeah, exactly. I was going to go on to that. Yeah. I was gonna lead on to it, but
oh, okay, sorry, yeah, okay,
yeah.
My bad.
He slept in the bed with his grannies because he wanted to practice abstinence and see if he could stay away from sex. We know that he was also anti-Black when he went to South Africa. He believed that the Indians and Blacks shouldn't use the same doors at the Durban post office. So I want to ask you, whilst we remember Gandhi for being a peaceful revolutionary, why do you think we've never really challenged his anti-Blackness until really and truly now?
I mean, for me personally, I'd known about Gandhi's anti-Blackness for quite a while. The same time I kind of figured out when I was learning about Winston Churchill and the atrocities that he committed as well. And I think this is the thing. Gandhi loved white people. He very much supported, you know, that's the thing.
And he also upheld the caste system, didn't he?
And from what I read as well, that he even drew, I can't remember which World War it was, but he even volunteered Indians to fight in that war. So he was just as much, like I said, he was upholding white supremacy. So I think that of course, Britain wanted to immortalize this figure because this was just another way. They saw him as a way of getting more people onto their agenda. You know, he's doing his thing and he's appearing this way, but he's also doing something that is aligned in their ideologies. And I think, did you ask me why it's taken this long for?
Yeah, why do you think it's taken this long?
Because you know what it is, people don't. You know, I think because again, it goes back to like the lack of representation or like people that are put up there. And the moment that someone that you've, I guess, in that community have put to such a high standard and, you know, not just praised by their own community, but by the world, has then gone and done something so problematic, it's hard for people to let go of that ideal that this, you know, he might have done this and this, but he did this and this was so harmful to the Black community. And that, you know, it's like, for example, like, you know, when, you know, the Bill Cosby show, watching, you know, the Bill Cosby show.
I've actually never watched it in my life.
Oh, okay. So I used to watch the reruns on Trouble TV, but,
oh shit, you know, we have 2 minutes left. Do you want to do another 30 minutes?
Yeah, we can do another 30 minutes.
All right, so, cool. Let me save this, and then I'm gonna come back. Okay, so just to let everyone know, we're gonna come back. We're gonna do another 30 minutes because this has been a very eye-opening and informative conversation. So we'll be back. I'll be back in 2 minutes. I'm just gonna save this. So
cool. To log out.
Yeah, I'll let me. And we are back. This is gonna be another 30 minutes of my conversation with Sheerah, because we went over time a little bit. That's what happens when you're having an empowering conversation. So I'm just really looking forward to that. I've saved it all onto my page so everyone can tune in as well. So yeah, great. Let's get this on. We've got another 30 minutes, everyone. So tune in, lock in with your questions and so much more. Let's carry on that conversation. Hopefully my connection doesn't play up. All right. And we're back. Yes. So sorry about that. I've posted up on my page so everyone knows that it's not lost. It's going to be there and it's saved. It's going to be a conversation you can access at any time. So as you were saying, my apologies for that.
No, it's cool. Yeah, so like, this was something I've read ages, you know, before Bill Cosby's like, you know, the stuff came out about what he had done to all those women, you know, before that, I think, so he was painted as this, you know, this really wholesome guy. And like, you know, especially during that time where there was so much, when Black people were being portrayed on TV, they were always portrayed as like these negative stereotypes. And obviously he comes out with a show where it just shows like a family unit, a Black family unit, and they're like well off and, you know, educated and stuff like that. And I think for a lot of like African American people, seeing that really positive representation, that, you know, for a lot, like, it kind of also for them, I guess they saw like a second father in that TV show, and it was like, wow, you know, this person known across, you know, the world, and he's, you know, putting us in a good light as well. And then all of a sudden the stuff happens, and then there was so many people that didn't want to accept that he had did what he did, and they couldn't even accept it, and they didn't want to address it, or they just thought it was, no, we're just going to brush it under the carpet. But I think that's what it is. It's like, because of, and that's why it's also history comes into it, and learning more about other historical figures and other, you know, people that we can look up to, so that we have other people that we can look up to. It's like this, you know, that one person, Gandhi, doesn't represent every single South Asian person, and he's not the only South Asian revolutionary. There's so many other people, but there's not enough being told on that history. So yeah, I think just the fact that it took a long time for a lot of people to address it, because people wanted to hold on to any little, you know, it's like holding on to that little hope of thinking maybe he was good, but it's like, this guy was a bad guy. He wasn't, you know, yeah. I just don't know. Yeah, sorry.
So would it be the sense of celebrity idol worship? You know, you see these people in such a positive way. And I wanted to ask you, I think the moral and the ethical bar of today is rightly and righteously quite high. But can the actions, so typically when we think of people, one bad sometimes can overshadow all the good that they've done. Do you think sometimes we're a bit too harsh in some senses, that we take away all the good they might have done, irrespective if they've held some not so wholesome views?
Is that like, I guess for example, in regards to like cancel culture, for example, like, you know, you see it's different if like, okay, if that person, obviously, let's say talk about someone who's currently doing good right now, and if that person made a mistake in the past that was problematic, yes, it should be brought up and they should be held accountable. But it's also seeing, okay, up and from that point and what they're doing now, have they gone out their way to educate themselves and better themselves? And only, you know, that should be taken into account. But I think that the problem is that a lot of people actually enjoying the act of canceling someone and dragging someone, rather than actually seeing, yeah, that's what's scary. And I've seen that so many times. Like, you know, you see, and this happens, it's not just, this happens to everyone, you know, people that are currently, you know, doing, you know, people need to understand that we weren't all conscious at one point. We weren't woke. You weren't born woke. And throughout your life, when you start unlearning, that doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect the first time round. Do you know what I'm saying? That means that unlearning means making mistakes along the way, having to be held accountable and checked for some of the problematic stuff that you've said or you've done, whether you've knowingly done it or, you know, not even realized that you've gone and done and said something problematic. And, you know, I think social media has kind of created, especially like the woke community has created this really hostile environment of like, you have to be perfect. It's like, I'm not. And that actually goes against that you can't change the world that way. How do you expect to change the world if you can't even allow people to grow or space to grow? And, you know, I've seen that a lot on social media, and it's scary actually, because it makes you think like, you know, both you, me, so many other people, we're not perfect people. And there was, you know, social media was around when we were not conscious, or when we were, you know, not just when we're not conscious, when we're constantly unlearning, or when we partaking in problematic things. And the most important thing is that if that person can address it, be held accountable, and know that the damage is done and it can't be reversed, if you can change, you know, if you've only now continued trying to uplift your communities and doing better and being a good ally, that's the most important thing, right? But like I said, people enjoy seeing other people fail and lose opportunities and being dragged and stuff like that. So.
I think you absolutely made such a key point. Cancel culture drags people through the mud, and it absolutely acts like people can't get up, clean themselves off and dust themselves off. And there's going to be a lot of people that I know that believe that liberalism nowadays is anything but liberal. It's actually quite illiberal. And I want to ask you personally, can we forgive Gandhi for his anti-blackness and the things he did in his youth, and remember him in a more nuanced way, in the way that we remember him for the good, but also the bad? Is there space for that in this current climate?
I guess, you know, again, he's dead, so it's not like he can change everything that's happened. But I think it's like, up until his death, I'm assuming that he was still anti-black and misogynistic and a creep. So for me, it's personally hard. When I'm talking about cancel culture, I'm just kind of like talking about, like, you know, those that are living right now that have made mistakes in the past and that can change. I don't know. I mean, I guess for me, I see it as like, well, I can look for someone else to look up to that isn't as problematic as Gandhi. I feel like that's kind of different. I don't know. It just feels different because he's dead. So, you know, he's made his mistakes, and even till the point of his death, he was problematic. So
it leaves us in a little bit of a rock and a hard place, I suppose.
Yeah. I think when I refer to cancel culture, it's really talking about, you know, what is happening right now with people currently living, and, you know, and it's learning from those that came before and doing better than that each time. It's like, okay, you know, you've got these amazing revolutionaries, but then you also just find out, like, oh, but they're also problematic. There's so many, you know, amazing people that did really crappy things. And, you know, you can take some, I guess, if the majority of the stuff that they did was good, then yes. But I think with Gandhi, it just feels like there's so much. Some people say, oh yeah, you know, he did so good, but he still upheld the caste system. For me, there was more bad than good. And it didn't seem like it was more beneficial for him to be in proximity to whiteness, rather than really, for me, empowering your people means being proud of yourself and your blackness, your brownness, not being proud because you're in proximity to whiteness. And then that's the problem. Does that make sense?
No, that does make sense. Yeah. That definitely makes sense. And someone asked a very good question, as you were mentioning. Oh, whoops, I've pressed the wrong thing. How do I listen? I'm still trying to understand. Okay, right. So someone asked a question. They said, here we go. What Tamil South Asian revolutionaries do you look up to?
This is really interesting because I actually personally have found it hard. I don't have any really like South Asian or Tamil revolutionaries that I've looked up to, mainly because for me, I think when I have come across some or whatever, there's always in my head, I'm always thinking, are they anti-black? Do you know what I mean? It's like some of the problem is that there were a lot of movements, like non-black POC movements, seem to only include their community, but then they also kind of like think that by uplifting their community, they have to tread on the black community. So for me, in general, even my own empowerment has come from black revolutionaries. It's taking from taking what I've learned from, you know, black women and black revolutionaries and kind of applying that into my own life and seeing how I can use that to help my communities. And, you know, it's like, for example, like the Black Panther Party, I love the fact that, you know, they not only were about empowering the black community, but they also created and supported so many non-black POC communities around the world. And I'd never seen any, you know, not even just South Asian, but I haven't, you know, South Asian group do, or not just South Asian, but non-black POC communities do the same thing that the black community and black revolutionaries have done for other people. But yeah, it's just been one of those things. for me, no, I haven't found any Tamil or South Asian revolutionaries that I feel like, yeah, I've been. And I think it's also the fact that I don't speak Tamil, which really, you know, gets on my nerves that I can't, because if I could, I feel like I could reach a wider audience. But, you know, I think the language barrier makes it hard for me to even understand what, you know, those movements are about. But for me, I've been satisfied with what I've learned from Black revolutionaries. And, you know, you've got Marcus Garvey, you've got, you know, powerful people like Malcolm X, and even like, for example, like Malcolm X, that famous speech, like the "Who taught you to hate yourself" speech, although, you know, it was directed specifically for the Black community, it's that question that I think every community can take something from that. Who taught you to hate yourself? That question, and that he asked that group, that audience, with such conviction. And I think I've never, still to this day, I have never seen a South Asian person talk the same way that I have seen with Black revolutionaries, the way, like, you know, in that sense. But yeah, does that answer your question?
I would like to believe that, but that has to definitely answer the question.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not saying. By the way, I'm not saying that there isn't. I personally, in my life, have been inspired by Black revolutionaries.
Oh wow! And they've said thank you for your honesty. We've got another question in the question box, and I knew this individual was going to ask this because we were just talking about it.
What's your opinion on cancel culture? Bad. Obviously, it's just so toxic, and I think it's not only just about the act of it's like to cancel someone is not even giving them space to better themselves. Do you know what I mean?
I have not heard someone with that view for a very long time.
It's not giving them space to better themselves and educate themselves. And you know, the moment that you come at someone like that, do you really think that if you were treated like that you would want to change?
Of course not. You'll be even more resistant to it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So people, all of these woke people, you're actually doing the worst thing possible to encourage change, because you're just cancelling someone. And it's like, wait a minute, what about so when you do something like that, you have to turn it around on them, be like, oh, so are you implying that you haven't even done anything wrong in your life? Because would you have cancelled someone the same way that, I mean, like, have you done the same kind of thing as that person? And would you cancel yourself the same way that you cancel that person?
I think everybody is quick to judge when they live in a glass house.
Yeah, definitely. Unless and that's what, the older I've got, and I'm going to be 25, but, you know, I believe in putting myself in other people's positions. And, you know, when I have seen certain people be cancelled about stuff, you know, certain things, and obviously it's certain things, I'm not, you know, some things like very problematic. And, you know, if for example, I think if someone has been called out for that thing and hasn't apologized and hasn't held themselves accountable and continues with the problematic behavior, that is different. That's just like, you know, that's willful ignorance. You're choosing to be ignorant and just completely put aside other people's feelings and how your actions are hurting someone else. That kind of, you know, that I think, yeah, deserves to be cancelled. But the actual, you know, the little things of like trolling people to the point where someone wants to go and, you know, do something harmful to themselves, that is, you know, I've seen it happen through social media, and I think that's so scary. And, you know, God forbid that anyone is in that position, because it's not a nice thing to go through. But people should be held accountable. Like, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be held accountable. I'm just saying that people need space to grow, and there needs to be forgiveness, understanding. But yeah, that's what I think.
And we've got another question. Bang! Everyone's throwing it in the question box. That's what I like.
Do you think people in woke culture has become increasingly unempathetic?
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. It's, you know what it is? It's about being self-righteous, because all of a sudden everyone's become like, you know,
pariahs.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, it literally reminds me of like, you know, back when, because I was brought up Christian, it reminds me of all of these church people, you know.
Yeah.
Most of them wanting to, they remind me of church people, the way that, you know, they go around, you're all in your fancy gear with your head held high, looking down on everyone that has done something, or you heard a rumor. Yet when, you know, behind closed doors, they're doing the most fucked up shit. which what you find out is like all of us have made mistakes. You know, some of us unfortunately had those mistakes be recorded through social media, and we can't take that back. And some of us, you know, all of different things happen. And I think that, like I said, people have become so self-righteous, and there's this thing of having to prove, like, you know, proving yourself to be, even being woke has become a trend now. It's like, oh, you know, proving yourself, like, oh, I'm so woke, I'm gonna, you know, and having being more concerned about not looking racist rather than actually actively being anti-racist themselves.
So performative activism versus conscious activism.
Yeah. And, you know, you need to have empathy. You need to have, you know, understand that people are capable of change. And if you can't give people that space, again, if you keep on reminding someone you did this, even after they said sorry, even after they held themselves accountable, even after they have shown that they have progressed and are only doing good till now, if you keep on just saying, oh, but do you remember that time? But do you remember that time? Then people are going to be like, you know what? I'm just going to fall back into my own ways. Not just that, or just be like, I can't, it will lead people to do things that will harm themselves. People need to take a good look at themselves.
I think that's a very good point. And because we've got 10 minutes left, we've got a few more questions. But the quick point I'm going to make is, it's very much that idea of you haven't forgiven them. And if you don't forgive them and you keep them in that trauma of what they've done, how are they going to ever effectively forgive themselves if they genuinely want change? So we can both agree in response to that question, woke culture and cancel culture can be incredibly toxic at times. And I think the culture has to be a bit more empathetic. I think, as you said, Malcolm X, he said that don't be mad at somebody for what they don't know, for effectively you were that person once upon a time ago. And we've got another question, which is, what do you think is effective allying?
What do I think is effective allying? I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Sean? What do you think it is?
Oh God, you're one of the few people that's asked me this question. You know, interestingly, I think my opinion comes from a very Pan-African view. When you said that you can't be mad at people when the table was never built for you, and I think Audre Lorde said it best, that the master's tools can never dismantle the master's house. You have to effectively build your own. And I'm Pan-African in the sense of I believe for a people, we have to do for ourselves and nobody else can do. I think if I was to answer it, what is effective allying? I think it's the idea of listening, being willing to expose yourself to uncomfortable truths and perhaps to challenging narratives that you were once raised on. And I had to go through that myself if I was going to perform allyship for other people around me, especially because I don't understand everyone's experience. But I'd say to me, it's just listening, learning, getting ready to get a little bit uncomfortable, because nothing beautiful grows in your comfort zone. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at, you know, Asia Barber. She, everyone should go and follow Asia Barber. She's like a writer, and like she talks a lot on like race issues, and she made a point talking like make your uncomfortability normal. Yeah, and when she said that, I thought that's so important, to actually stop being like, uncomfortability shouldn't be like, oh, it's a one-off thing. No, because this whole conversation shouldn't be comfortable. That's the whole problem, because we're too comfortable in what is already happening. We need to be uncomfortable as possible, but also taking that uncomfortability and using it to actually learn and listen and understand that, you know, what you have, not just you have done, but like, you know, understanding me as a non-Black person of color is understanding how, you know, my own privileges, and using what I have learned to also then go into my own communities and teach them to be better people and allies to the Black community. And essentially for me, it's about, you know, as like white people and non-Black people of color need to go underneath the Black community and lift them until that they're at the same position, because it's about equity, not equality. It's about equity, because it's about not, you know, it's not, they're already on that platform there, they're here. So therefore we need to be under here and lift them up to the highest and make sure that they can, you know, do things in their, like, it's like, for example, like even spending in the Black community that is helping them build themselves economically. We need to be able to help them build themselves, because this issue that has come about is not Black people's fault or their problem, and it's something that has benefited us. So we need to do everything in our power to make sure that Black people are brought to that level. And part of that is listening, understanding, and supporting them in every single way that we can, and holding yourself accountable for the past things that you've done and bettering yourself from it.
We're gonna take one more question. Let's see, we got this one. How can we as a society achieve POC solidarity?
For solidarity to happen, I think there's a lot of, for me, I found that the Black community, especially Black women, have been so welcoming and have their arms open to everyone, like to a point where, for me, I've seen it like this. It's like, it's like this, yeah. It's like, like, I'll use Black women as the example. They have opened up their arms to so many different people and uplifted so many different communities of people, and those communities wouldn't even do the same back to them, and yet they're still willing to open their arms and their kindness to people. And I just think that this issue, again, because it's not, the issue affects Black people the most, therefore non-Black people of color need to be able to address their privileges, needs to look at like I said, intersectionality is what is going to give us progress. Understand, although, you're a Black person and I'm a brown person, there's this umbrella term of putting us as people of color. But like I said, our experiences are not the same, because I still benefit from, yeah. And I think even now, like, people of color is not being used. I think that's why I use BIPOC, because it's also an intersectional term of.
So what does BI stand for?
Oh, Black, Indigenous, people of color. Okay. So it's yeah. So basically, it's saying that like Black and Indigenous people have a completely different experience to just people of color. It's kind of like addressing the intersectionalities of their identities that will privilege them or oppress them. So yeah, it's like I said, intersectionality is going to be what is going to give us change the world and progress, because even as people of color, we can't all identify our experiences the same. Like even within my community, a light-skinned South Asian person couldn't just compare their experience to mine, because they still benefit from having lighter skin or being in proximity to whiteness because of their white skin. So, addressing those little things, and, that's the problem. I think a lot of non-Black people of color, there are the few that are actually starting to address that, yes, there is a difference, and we benefit from the oppression of Black people. But then there's also so many people in, going into my community and family members that think, oh, why haven't our issues been raised the same way that Black people's has? And, oh, well, we're oppressed too. And not realizing how much privilege there is when they're even making statements like that, and not even addressing the anti-Blackness that is so ingrained in our communities. So is that a good answer? Like, does that make sense? Because I feel like I talk about so many different things at one time and just... I think
I think they're definitely happy with that. And I think we've got 5 minutes left. This is the longest live that I've done, and I think when you just look at the comments and the engagement, the interactions, people have certainly taken away a lot, and connecting my audience with your audience, people are going to walk away with so much here to unpack and to learn. And I want to ask you quickly, I'm going to ask you just a few quick fire questions. Do you have any books that you would recommend to people to read to learn?
Wait a minute. So I was do I have any books? Does it have to be books per se, or could it just be
anything? It can be anything. I just ask books because I like reading.
Okay, books, but I just think, just in general, I think people should, and I'm pretty sure there's so many books out there on this movement, but people should look up the Harlem Renaissance movement.
Yeah.
Because I only came across it when I was maybe between like 17, 18. So it was like a Black arts and cultural movement that kind of started from like 1918 that went on to the 1930s, and just learning about just the beautiful Black arts and you know, culture and just these like really important individuals that came out of that movement, and also a majority of them also being queer Black people, and how and a lot of people don't realize this, but how actually ballroom culture stemmed from the Harlem Renaissance era and the queer scene and stuff like that. So just look up that, because I just think it's so important just to, you know, just get yourself in touch with Black culture and history, because it's not just, for me, it's not just about, you know, it's as much as it's also very important to learn about the oppression of Black people and systematic oppression of Black people and how it's affected them today. It's also so vital and important to remember that Black people gave us all the joys in life, which is music and art and everything that we enjoy, and learning about all of these individuals that contribute to the joy that we have today. So look it up.
We have questions, but as I said, that, you know, we've been going for an hour and 30 minutes. Another question I got to ask you really quickly is, what does the future hold for you?
What does the future hold for me? I hope that, I don't know, I mean, what I want to do with my life, or
anything, whatever comes to mind.
I mean, you know what? The more I think about it, I really just, it's so simple. I really just want to be financially stable, for one, and, you know, be around more Black and brown people with, you know, same mindsets as me, not just Black and brown people, but allies as well, with same mindset as me and have the same goal, and to be able to create content and, you know, produce beautiful content that represents all Black and brown people, and do the best that I can with the privilege that I have to do so. And also hopefully have enough money to actually start putting money into the community. So, yeah.
And what can people do to support you on your own journey as well, in solidarity with the Black movement?
With what people can, say that again, sorry.
What can people do to support you in solidarity with the Black movement? And I think even your own community's movement.
I mean, you know, I'm constantly posting up so many people that it's not just me. Like, I also believe in putting on people. Like, I call it put on culture, because I think that should be a thing. We should, you know, as someone with a platform, I'm constantly sharing so many amazing Black and brown content creators, and, like, you know, and I just think, just, you know, follow them as well. It's not just about following me, follow them, because I like to think that if you guys trust me enough, I'm going to put you onto some great people. So, yeah, just follow, keep supporting, and, you know, listen to me. Listen to me. Yeah, that's what I can say.
No, but definitely, I think, again, I got to say on behalf of everyone here, I believe this has been one of the most informative and one of the most powerful lives. And I think, again, you can tell that by the comments, the questions people have asked. Honestly, I think I'm really thankful you've made the time to jump on this live. And
I was so nervous, though. I was so nervous. I was thinking, like, because sometimes I get so nervous, even if it's a live, even though there's not like an audience, it's knowing that there's so many eyes on you. And just sometimes I also like forget things, and I also, like, I think there's that part of me, because I'm not an academic. Everything that I've learned is from my own experiences and what I've, you know, taught myself. So sometimes I feel like I'm not always the best at articulating myself, but I've really enjoyed this, and I'm glad that people have taken away something.
Most definitely. And if there's anyone, even yourself or anyone watching, wants me to interview and question, send them my details, or I'll reach out to them. And that's for yourself too, Sheerah. If there's anyone that you think would be great for this, I'll be more than happy to ask them questions, you know, as long as they're willing to be accessible and so on. But I just want to say thank you. And I think people have to check out your work. And again, I got to say this to people. I've saved the first live. I'm going to be saving the second one. So it's always going to be available on my page. Share, comment, repost, like, support Sheerah's work as well, because the work you're doing is quite pivotal. And I thank you for everything that you're doing for the Black community, especially in this time. You know, I'm really appreciative of it. And I think,
you know what? Please don't even thank me. Like, when people do say, even when I get like Black people thank me, I'm like, this is literally, I have to do this. Like I said, it's a moral obligation for every a white and non-black person of color to be doing this. Like, this is not even something that should be thanked. It should be, we should be doing this because it's the right thing to do, because it's the human thing to do. Seeing another person suffer and their suffering also benefiting us is not something that should even sit well with any of us. So, you know, I have to do it. You have to do it.
I think that says a lot about you as a human, and we need more people like you in the world. So, with that, we've been at it for an hour and 30 minutes. It's been powerful, and as I said, check out Sheerah's work, check out my work, share, repost, and just lock in. We've got more guests, and hopefully in the future we can do a part 2 as well, because I always ask people to do a part 2 because people grow, and as you said, we're not the same person today as we will be in the future. So definitely, I'm looking forward to a part 2.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be looking forward. Who knows what can happen?
No, for sure. For sure. So I want to say thank you, and yeah, everyone that's watched, thank you very much for tuning in and engaging. So we definitely both got to rock off now.
Yep. Bye, everyone.
I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.